Hello, my name is Szymon Klos, and in this talk I will present you how to create custom UI component using JSDialogs. In this case, you will see how I implemented new formula bar in Spreadsheets. First, we will look which problems we were solving using this new component, why it didn't work in the standard way, and we needed a custom widget, and then I will show some code pieces how to connect all things together to have it working. So, about the problems in the previous version, we were using canvas and we were drawing content on that canvas to show for the user the formula bar. So it means it wasn't text rendered by the browser, but an image. So it was sometimes blurry, for example on mobile, when we used some non-standard zoom level. Also, it was impossible to style that component using CSS because all the borders or buttons were drawn on a canvas, and also it was not perfect user experience for especially for mobile users, because when trying to move the cursor, we were just sending position on the canvas, so it was hard to place the cursor correctly. Also, on the image, the content wasn't available for screen readers, but now, after the conversion, it will be, because we will use the standard input field from the browser. So why it needs dedicated solution? JSDialogs in general works with welded widgets. It means on the server we have some standard mechanism which provides some APIs which allows us to use some native implementation for different platforms. And if some widgets are not implemented this way, they are using the standard LibreOffice widgets directly, and JSDialogs doesn't know about the events happening in these widgets. So formula bar is this case. It's not welded, and it's hard to convert that because it's a complex component. So it was a bit risky to do this at this time. Also, we needed a lot of changes in welding framework, so I decided to prepare some custom solution for that, which uses JSDialogs on the client side, but not on the server side. So what we need to create the custom widget? First, we need some file in the online repository where we will place our code for UI component. In that file, we will create some container in the HTML document, and then we need JSDialog builder, which builds the widgets, and some content for this builder in JSON format. So the standard way of creating new UI components currently is to add new file to the browser src control directory in our repo. The name is always control dot and some name of the widget. Then, when we have our file, we can place there our code. For every new control, we use some kind of a class, which is some concept from the original leaflet library, where we inherit from L control class. It has some standard methods like onAdd and onRemove, which we should implement to bind some callbacks and also to free some callbacks when we remove the widget. We also need some method to create the component, which will be later register in our control UI manager, where we build and attach all our needed components for the view. Inside this file, we should also create new builder. JSDialog builder has many variants, like for example standard JSDialogs for JSDialog builder for dialogs and sidebar, and also we have notebook bar builder for notebook bar and mobile wizard builder for mobile UI. In case of formula bar, we just using JSDialog builder because it should look exactly the same on mobile and on the desktop. When we pass properties for constructing the builder, we can specify the parent component, which is owner of this builder, some reference to the main map object, and also classes we will use for all the widgets. The most important part is the callback. For custom widget, we want some custom functionality, so we need to pass the callback, which will handle all the user interactions. Later, when we receive some description of UI to build, we will use the build method, which should take as a parameter container where to build and data with JSON what we should build. In JSDialogs, we have three main types of messages. First one is the full window update. This is the initial message we should send and process by the builder. It simply builds the whole component. Then we can send some single updates, which are recreating the single widget inside of the component, or we can send also the small actions, which are just doing some changes inside the widget without rebuilding it. For example, we change the selection. We should handle all these messages in our component. Standard methods are on JSDialog update or on JSDialog action. Here on the next slide, you can see the example messages which are triggering these actions. Here we have one widget update on the left side and some action on the right side. The most important part is the ID, which specifies in which window we are doing a change, and control ID, which defines which widget we want to replace or modify. So this is how we can send some events to our user interface to modify it, but how to handle actions from the user when he for example clicks the button. For that we have a callback, which have 4 parameters. It takes object type, which specify what kind of a widget it is, event type, what happened, for example it was a text change, and then reference to the object which we modified or which is a source of an action, and then some additional data for more complex actions. We can also reuse the default callback handler, which simply sends the same event to the server. In this case, in formula bar, we want to communicate with server, so we are using that callback, and before sending the message, we are modifying some messages, because here we are using input field, but on the server we don't have standard input field, but like I said previously, it was an image drawing area. So we are converting here message, so server will think that we did the action on drawing area. And as a result, you can see I've built the standard HTML controls, which are shown on this picture. We can see its text area inside, so it handles the native text input for mobile and desktop, and it communicates with the server using the custom callback. Of course, I had to handle some of these actions also on the server side and send some updates, but it's some simple change with just sending the JSON I mentioned previously. So I think that's it. It's the brief description how to create some custom widget using JSDialogs. Thank you for listening.